Hello. So I've tried to do this video a few times over the last couple of days, but things keep changing by the time I edit the video. So I'm going to try again and just put it straight up. I think this is about our intelligence agencies and committees and our national security being completely compromised. So you may have seen or heard the other day, I was listening to Majid Nawaz over the weekend, and he spoke about Huawei and China's very clear influence on our government. I mean, there are people in cabinet and in Parliament who sit on the board of Huawei, so clearly have a personal interest in Huawei doing well. Again, I mean, it just speaks to the fact that we shouldn't let MPs have a different job or get paid to do anything else whilst they're an MP. I mean, it's just obvious, I think, but that's another matter for another time. So Huawei, quite clearly, China, quite clearly involved. I mean, it's not a surprise to me. I think China's heavily in our universities as well. So there you go. I really do. So China's everywhere, fine. I mean, not fine. But, people are talking about it, people are aware. It's obvious, it's blatant. I do think Russia is more of an issue, though. Because, well, I don't know. I think they're both equally an issue. So anyway, let's get on to the intelligence agencies. So Huawei and stuff, so there's definitely people in Parliament who are representing China to some extent. Then there's all this stuff going on with the intelligence committees. Now, in the last few weeks, there's been some serious changes to intelligence and security committees. The people in charge of them. There's been a lot of internal problems between civil servants and MPs. There's a lot of conflict around all of this at the moment. Theresa May came out a week or so ago to say, I think it was Mark Sidwell, is that the guy? He was chair for the Intelligence Committee and he was forced to resign by Dominic Cummings. Another person forced to resign by Dominic Cummings. So he had to resign, and Theresa May came out and said, for the first time as far as I could see, that she didn't agree with this government's decision. She said it was a purely political decision, it didn't make any sense, he has loads of experience, he's independent, that's what you need with these kinds of advisors, you need independent intelligence and security advisors, etc, etc, etc. And that was interesting to me, because I always thought that Theresa May had been part of this plan to get Boris in eventually. after that, I've come to believe that, yeah, Teresa didn't actually know. Her husband did, for sure, in my view, which would explain why a lot of the letters going to Downing Street weren't just addressed to her. They were addressed to her and her husband, which never happened when Thatcher was in office. So that's just an interesting thing. You know, clearly Theresa May wasn't seen as a legitimate person. Like, everyone spoke to her husband rather than her. Mental, absolutely mental. But yeah, anyway, she came out, spoke against the government. Then the other day there was a whole thing. Chris Grayling, the shittest person in cabinet I've ever seen, apart from maybe David Davis. It was all set for him to be voted in by the Intelligence Committee as the chair. That didn't happen because Dr. Lewis, a Tory, or ex-Tory, a Tory at the time, he colluded with SNP and Labour reps to vote him in instead of Grayling. He had the whip removed from him because he went against his own party. However, the Intelligence and Security Act, which governs how the committee must proceed, whoever gets voted in is chair until the next election. So, Tory or not, he's chair. There's been talk that the government are going to take some extreme measures to get a Tory in as chair. But I was listening to Dominic Cummings on BBC yesterday, and he made a very good point that the committee doesn't actually require that there is voting along party lines. So to remove that from him is it's just purely political again. MPs again coming out to say that this is a Cummings decision again, and importantly, this was only done because people realised that this was going to be a political and quite frankly dangerous decision to put Grayling in charge of something so important. He has no experience, he has nothing. Whereas Dr. Lewis, he was the Defence Committee's chair for 4 years. So, you know, at least he knows what he's doing. He's been in this a little bit. And I think importantly for a non-partisan, which it should be, a non-partisan committee about security, about national security, Dr. Lewis gets along well with people from all parties, which is what I would want for a chair. Certainly not Grayling. Grayling's got us to the point where we've got twice as many re-offenders as we do first-time offenders in prison. He banned books. He stopped trying to let people learn whilst they were in prison. He is responsible for HS2. He's responsible for half the woodland across the middle of England getting torn to fuck. You know, he's useless. Like, he really is. But Dominic Cummings likes him, so there you go. But yeah, there's since been... So the whole thing with this committee is that the committee is in charge of publishing a report on Russian intervention in our latest general election. The report was ready to be published early last year, so it's outdated, it's not even accurate anymore. There's way worse going on now, guaranteed. But because of all the fuckeries that's been going on with government lately, you know, they left early last year, they just dissolved government we don't have a functioning government, and no one seems to be bothered. Anyway, this committee are in charge of publishing this stuff, which basically says Russia have actors who are heavily involved in our politics. The government gave a statement ahead of this report being published to sort of misdirect our attention to a particular part of the report. The report has not yet been published. And then we hear yesterday again about Russia trying to hack into something to do with the vaccines for coronavirus. I mean, it just all seems quite bizarre. You know, I don't think we need to be told that Russia's involved in our politics. I think it's obvious. I think, considering we are a capitalist society, I think all you actually need to do is find out which foreign governments or which subsidiaries very close to foreign governments or their figures, you know, people of power. Just find out, you know, which countries have the most investment in the UK. They're who's involved in our politics, obviously. That's all this country cares about. So, you know, Huawei in 5G, they're definitely involved in our politics, as everyone was saying the whole time and our government ignored. Russia, they own half the property in London, the oligarchs, ex-KGB. The Independent, for fuck's sake, is owned by an ex-KGB agent. They're involved in our politics. UAE, Qatar, Dubai, Saudi Arabia. They own the majority of our football stadiums and clubs. I wonder, would they have an interest in UK politics? Yes, they would. America. Do you reckon they might have an interest? Oh, yeah. It's all very obvious. I don't know why people are struggling with this. At all. So, yeah. Dominic Cummings is in charge of our fucking government, by the looks of things. And has cleverly directed our attention towards China. Just as people started to actually, rally around to criticise Cummings, suddenly we're talking about China being involved and Russian hackers rather than just a Russian agent being in our bloody government. Like, come on. I think this is all too obvious at this stage. I think it's all too obvious.